I'm so glad it's my turn now. And I'm also really glad I was invited to speak about sustainable curiosity, because I had ingrained in my mind from a very young age that curiosity was a virtue, like patience or kindness. Growing up, my mother would always describe worthy people as curious people, people who had a great hunger for knowledge, a great passion for rich experience. The thing about curiosity, though, is that it's like a flame that needs constant refueling. As learning satisfies curiosity, new questions arise from new understanding. The flame gets bigger, it needs more fuel. So how do we find the fuel? Luckily, unlike with fossil fuels, we have infinite resources in human genius and creativity. We can sustain all the curiosity in the world by interacting with great minds or with great works of art, expressions of this genius. I'm here to talk about the art that I know best, classical music. And to help me out today, I have members of the University of Delaware Graduate String Quartet on cello. We have Meredith Bates. On second violin, we have Andrew Gensch. And on first violin, Justin Chow. And here's the love of my life. The viola. How can classical music sustain your curiosity? The answer is in thousands of ways, but we're going to focus on just one feature today, which, because it's so naturally, completely tied to our basic emotional instincts, is one of the most powerful storytelling tools we have in music. That feature is consonance and dissonance. What is consonance and dissonance? Well, in music, anytime we hear more than one note played at the same time, we call it harmony. Okay. Lovely. Thank you, guys. In music, harmony means... Okay, that's great. Thank you, guys. It means basically the same thing it does in English, things working together. In general, we can have two categories of harmony. Great. Along with one note, we can add consonant notes. That is, notes that sound really pleasing to our ear, stable and beautiful. Or, along with one note, we can add dissonant notes. That is, notes that don't seem to agree. They might even sound harsh or discordant. We can even have whole chords made up of dissonant tones. Do you hear how the voices sort of tug against each other? They clash and fight. Well, when composers go from dissonant chords to consonant ones, we feel this sense of relief or release. Conversely, when we start with really consonant chords and go to dissonant ones, we feel tension build up in the music. The plot thickens. Composers are constantly going back and forth between these types of harmony to tell their musical story. We all feel this very naturally, and so I'm going to show you a little video clip now of someone you might recognize reacting to classical music with his body. And I just want to warn you that in this video, William Hurt is not wearing his shirt. So even if you're a fan of his, please try and focus on the music. William Hurt is a great classical music lover. He's fallen in love with a deaf woman. He's desperately trying to share how he feels about the music. Look. There's a lot going on here. He shows different elements, a rising musical line. But what I'm interested in is that tension in his face. Here it is again. And a release. So this tension made me very curious. I wanted to see in the music what was actually going on. I went to the library, I got the score, and I circled all the places where he goes like this, so I could see what was actually happening in the music. We're going to play through that section that you heard in the film now, and we're going to stop on all those places where he makes those tense gestures so that you can hear all the details of those beautiful dissonances. So I don't know anything about William Hurt's musical training, but I think that there's a number of reasons he's reacting to the music the way he does. One reason is cultural context. So we're brought up with music in general that's more consonant. Most pop music sounds like this, a lot of holiday music, quite a bit of church music. So in contrast, dissonances kind of sound stranger to us. They bring us somewhere else. They're a little more foreign. But another part of the equation, can I get my clicker back here? Thanks. Is scientific. So every single note has a different wavelength of vibration. Different pitches have different wavelengths. Like these ones here, the top one has more frequent peaks in its wavelengths. That means it's a higher pitch. Do you notice how, looking from the top note, every second peak, it lines up perfectly with the bottom note? When that happens, the total resonance of the two notes together actually grows. So the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. This happens very consistently and very frequently with consonant intervals, like an octave shown here. It's one of our most consonant intervals. Meredith, would you play an A? And Justin, another A, an octave higher? Stable and more regular. Now, sometimes we have notes of different wavelengths that don't match up very often. So they don't have that reinforced sound in general. But sometimes we have this interesting acoustical phenomenon happening called beats. And this is a little confusing. I don't mean poetic beats or musical beats, whatever this fellow's up to here. Acoustic beats. are totally different. Acoustic beats are when those two wavelengths are waving along. They're not matching up. Suddenly, they do match up, peak on top of peak. And we have this huge wall of sound. And just as suddenly, it drops off. And this creates a percussive effect in our ears. So dissonant notes are literally beating against each other when we hear them. Probably the most dissonant harmony we can hear in music is called a tritone, which used to be called the diabolus in musica, because people found it so horrifying and disturbing that they assumed it must be the work of the devil. Would you play a tritone for us now? Great. So do you hear, again, the clash? And I don't know if you could hear those musical beats, but I guarantee you our musicians can. That's actually one way that we practice tuning notes together. Of course, if notes are really out of tune, they clash even more. But at the University of Delaware, we don't play out of tune. So you're never going to hear that. We're going to play through the film music for you one more time without stops, so you can hear the pace of unfolding tension and release at the pace that Bach intended. It's taken from his Concerto for Two Violins in D minor. This is the second movement. As you listen, you'll hear those changes in your body, but knowing now scientifically why they occur. Getting back to the beginning of our talk, all of the harmonies you heard there were from this piece of music, Mozart's Quartet Number 19, which was actually nicknamed the Dissonance Quartet because in it Mozart used this feature on a scale that was highly abnormal at the time. In fact, pieces like this were so shocking to the public that they led to Mozart's eventual rejection from mainstream Viennese society. People found the music too spicy, they called it, or they complained it has too many notes. We don't understand it. With our modern ears, we can get beyond the shock, knowing that consonance and dissonance have an aesthetic purpose. We'll play through the whole movement of this, the whole first movement of this quartet now. And you'll hear thousands of expressive tools. But I think you'll also hear, as science shows, there's something viscerally, physiologically powerful about consonance and dissonance. As a final thought, I encourage you, next time you're channel flipping through radio stations, if you happen to come across some classical music, let your instincts guide you in. Follow the story. It will sustain your curiosity, I promise. It's very important to have the music the right way up.